All right. Thank you, Gary and Anita. It is so good to see you all. Definitely friends of Neighborhood Village, and just kudos and congratulations on the Distinguished County Award from Volunteer Arlington. So well deserved. And just hearing all the exciting things you have coming up. This is such an amazing organization, and you do so much. So it is an honor to be here. I'm Rachel Coates. Anita, you promoted me. I'm the Bureau Director for Aging and Disability Services. I've been with Arlington County for about 11 years. Stephanie Hopkins is our food security coordinator for the county and has been doing amazing work. And you'll hear more from her here shortly. But I'll give you just a quick kind of overview on some of the nutrition programs that we've long offered, how a lot of that changed in March of 2020, how much we value the partnership with Arlington Neighborhood Village. And then Stephanie will give an update on the Food Security Task Force and a recent study that the Urban Institute completed on food insecurity here in Arlington County. Um, our Arlington Agency on Aging is housed within Aging and Disability Services. We are located within Arlington's Department of Human Services, and all agencies on aging, or affectionately known as AAAs, are required to provide nutrition services. We receive federal funding from the Older Americans Act to provide nutrition services. Some of those include our traditional kind of home delivered meals. We partner very closely with Meals on Wheels of Arlington, a fellow nonprofit, in delivering meals to individuals who are mostly homebound. We work very closely with Department of Parks and Recreation and have 3 social 60 plus cafes or congregate nutrition sites. We have a very popular senior farmers market program, which is open now, and I'll put in the chat the link for anyone who meets the income eligibility to apply for the farmers market program. We offer nutrition education and counseling through a bilingual staff member. Um, we do provide referrals to our community living program for home health aides to help with grocery shopping, meal preparation. We make referrals to the Arlington Food Assistance Center, or AFAC, and a number of other programs. In March of 2020, our lives were all changed significantly. I was joking with Stephanie that I feel like she and I were on the phone daily, and as soon as I hung up with her, I was on the phone with Wendy. But everything changed, from the way we provide services to the way hunger impacts especially our older adults. Our Meals on Wheels program immediately shifted from pretty much daily delivery to bulk delivery once a week. And that was to protect our volunteers, but also some of our most vulnerable older adults. That has continued through today. The majority of our older adults in the program receive their meals once a week, and that was their preference. They actually like having it once a week, but we do have daily routes for individuals who need their meals delivered every day. Our social 60 plus cafes had shifted to delivering meals. All 3 sites are now reopened, and we're slowly building participation at Arlington Mill, Walter Reed, and Langston Brown. Thanks to a grant from the Arlington Community Foundation and Amazon, we were able to deliver directly to some of our independent living residences. At that time, we had many individuals who family were not able to visit. They were had barriers to grocery shopping, and so we were able to expand the home delivered meal option. And then probably one of the biggest changes was Arlington Food Assistance Center was receiving a number of calls in March of 2020 for grocery delivery. And so at that time, Stephanie was with AFAC, and Helen King, who many of you know, Stephanie, myself, and Lily Duran came up with a plan to launch delivery of groceries for AFAC. And at the same time, Wendy was such an amazing partner in offering many of those services, the check-ins. And so just eternally grateful for the support that Wendy and Neighborhood Village and all of you as volunteers provided to help keep our communities safe. But we realized, this was something that the pandemic brought on, but it was a much bigger issue. And Denise, I appreciate your mention of working with individuals experiencing homelessness. I think oftentimes we may not see that in our community. We also may not see food insecurity here in Arlington, but it exists. And so thanks to advocacy from many of our neighbors, our leader of the Department of Human Services, Anita Friedman, we were able to advocate to the county board for the creation of a food security coordinator. There were many, many qualified candidates, but Stephanie just blew everyone out of the park. She is a phenomenal champion and advocate of this issue. She chairs the Food Security Task Force. And I will turn it over to Stephanie now to give an update on the task force, as well as some of the highlights from the most recent report.
Before Stephanie? You do, Rachel, we do have a question here. Somebody said, as a driver, some of the people I drive indicate they don't cook and they're not enthused about the meals that are being delivered. Do you have any recommendations about other choices, or what they might do differently?
Yes, I think we often complete customer satisfaction surveys, and we do influence the menu. Jeffrey's Catering is the vendor who prepares the meals. And so we do try to solicit feedback. One of the biggest barriers is that the meals must meet the guidance of the dietary restrictions for older adults. So we hear often, there's too many beans or too many vegetables or add more salt. And so with some of those things, we have pretty set guidelines. But if there is someone specific, they can email us or call, and I'll put the information in the chat. Anna Caballero, who is our registered dietitian, meets with the vendor to influence the meal, and they get into the weeds with it of what makes up the meals, having more seasonal vegetables and fruit, incorporating as much fresh as possible. But we do value hearing the feedback and try to make adjustments as we can. In addition, you'll hear more towards the end of some of the options that we're considering of partnering with local vendors and restaurants to offer more variety in the meals that are being offered and delivered. So great question, and I'd say more to come on that.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie Hopkins. I work for the Department of Human Services, and I sat still too long. My light turned off. As Rachel mentioned, I formerly worked at AFAC, the Arlington Food Assistance Center, and at the start of the pandemic, I worked with Rachel and a few others to set up AFAC's home delivery system. So I was also on the phone with Wendy a few times, so it's nice to be back with you all. We did some brainstorming to figure out how we could make this work. As she mentioned, I lead up a group of about 25 to 30 leaders in Arlington that are working around food security. So some of them are people who actively distribute food through a food pantry or a church or a school. Some of them work closely with people who need food. So we have representatives from affordable housing and the Arlington Free Clinic and the school social workers. We have 2 community members on the task force, as well as representatives from the Chamber of Commerce, the NAACP, and some other community organizations. We were started in late spring of 2021. The county board chair, Matt DiFerranti, was the impetus of getting our group formed. We were tasked with being together for 12 to 18 months with the request to come up with a strategic plan to improve food security in Arlington. So we've been doing a lot of our own research. We've been learning about how the schools provide meals and how the organizations that work with homeless families and individuals provide food services, how Rachel's team provides nutrition services to older adults, how the SNAP and WIC programs work, so we can understand the landscape of food insecurity in Arlington. We also partnered with the Urban Institute, which is an independent research institution based in Washington, D.C., to do an academic research study about food security in Arlington. So what I'm going to present today is some of their findings. We worked with them from, let's see, August to February. So August 2021 to this past February. And we did some community feedback in the fall of last year. So a lot of the research that you're going to see is coming from data from last fall. So I'm going to share my screen. All right, Rachel, give me a thumbs up. You can see? Cool. All right. There are a lot of words on this slide, but I'm going to tell you what it says. So they did 3 different kinds of analysis. So the first one was looking at available data. So they looked at where grocery stores are that accept SNAP, how many people are receiving SNAP, which is commonly known as food stamps. They looked at bus routes and how, how long it takes people to get from certain areas to certain grocery stores, things like that, that were kind of available data. The second section of our research was to do a survey. We highlighted 4 areas of the county that had high food insecurity and sent out a postcard with a link to a survey to every household in those 4 neighborhoods. We sent postcards to about 9,000 households, and we got 800 responses, which was kind of the number they were looking for. And then we did follow-up interviews with 16 of those households. So we had phone interviews with them to ask them some kind of deeper questions about their experiences. So the information that I'm going to present is from all 3 of those different ways to gather information. So this is a map of Arlington. The darker areas are the ones that have higher food insecurity. So these 2 neighborhoods on the west end of the county, that's Glen Carlin and Arlington Mill. Here in the middle, that's Buckingham. And then down here is Crystal City and Pentagon City. So these were the areas. This is based on data from the American Community Survey, which is run by the Census Bureau. And these are from data from 2015 to 2019. They take a 5-year estimate. So this does not take into account the pandemic, but it was the most recently available data. So when we did the survey, we did these 3 neighborhoods, so Buckingham and the 2 neighborhoods on the west end of the county. And then we actually picked this neighborhood that's right next to the Pentagon. It's like right at Columbia Pike and Washington Boulevard, which is a traditionally Black neighborhood that we were interested in hearing from as well. And so what did we find? So from our survey, our 800 respondents, 28% of them responded that they were food insecure. About 50% of the residents who were Black that responded to the survey said they were food insecure. Same with the Hispanic residents. About 30% of the families with children said they were food insecure. About 25% of the families that had an older adult were food insecure, and about 25% of the Asian residents that responded said they were food insecure. And we used a USDA questionnaire to determine food insecurity. In the survey, we asked, how would you handle a $400 emergency? If you had to spend $400 that you weren't expecting, either a medical bill or a car emergency or whatever, what would you do? And so this is kind of what people said. They would change or decrease the amount of food they purchased. They would take out a loan or borrow money from friends or family. They would take on extra hours or try and find an extra job. But a lot of people said they just wouldn't know how to pay for that at this point. I think it was about 30% said, I don't know. I would have to figure it out, and I don't have a plan for that. Let's see. Some of these quotes are from the interviews. They say that, you know, sometimes we just have to do without. Maybe we'll cancel our phone for a month or our TV for a month to help pay for other bills. And the other quote is, you know, I eat whatever I have in the house. If that means I'm eating eggs, only eggs for a while, that's what I do. And that's the reality of folks that, you know, don't have a lot of flexibility. We asked how residents travel to get their groceries. So the chart on the right shows you how they get to the store. So the blue line was everybody, and the yellow line was just the 28% of respondents who were food insecure. So about 69% drove, and 33% of those got a ride. A lot of those folks, especially in the Buckingham neighborhood, shop at Glebe Market or the other grocery stores that are walkable. So a lot of people chose to walk. Which was really interesting. And then, you know, people said, I go wherever's closest, or, you know, I really choose the store based on how much things cost.
I have a comment here about the neighborhoods you were looking at, that Glen Carlin was listed because of the school populations, but the students, most of them don't actually live in Glen Carlin.
So yeah, so we used census tracts. So not school boundaries, but census tracts, which are, when you think about data, you can track a census tract all the way, kind of, you can match them with that other available data from the American Community Survey. And they have clear boundaries. So we tried to match those census tract boundaries with the school boundaries, so we could talk to the schools that were the right schools and send out through school communications for people to look for the postcard.
Okay.
So we asked whether people could find the foods that they wanted at the store, and then whether they were able to afford them. Because there's one thing if you can find the foods you're looking for, but another thing if it's too expensive for you to actually be able to purchase. So 6 in 10 of the food insecure households said that they could find food at the store that's healthy and nutritious, but only 3 in 10 said that they could regularly afford that food. And then half of the food insecure families said they could regularly find food that represents their culture, but only 2 in 5 said that they could regularly afford it. We asked about their use of free groceries or meals. So that's either AFAC or one of the other food pantries, or a program like Meals on Wheels or Social 60 Plus Cafe. About half of the food insecure households said that they had gotten free groceries or meals in the last month. But 60% said that they didn't use free groceries or that they didn't know where to get them. And when asked why, they said either I don't need it. So they screened for food insecurities, so that their answers to the survey said, you know, you're either worried about not having enough food or you don't have enough food, but still they didn't think that they needed those services, or they didn't want charity, or they said that the foods offered weren't foods that they wanted. When pressed a little bit further in the phone calls, you know, it was kind of a mixed bag. Some people said, you know, if I were to get it, that would probably be nice to not look at my shelves and say, oh, there's nothing there. But other people said, you know, I'm a proud person. I don't want to have to ask for help. And other people said it's, you know, it's hard to get to, or their referrals expire frequently, or there are other challenges that keep me from going. So as a task force, those are the kinds of things that we're looking at, areas where we can make changes that can make it a little more accessible. So digging a little bit deeper there, let's see. Some people said that the foods offered didn't reflect their culture. So, you know, maybe they offered beans, and either, you know, my family doesn't eat a lot of beans, or those aren't the beans that we eat. So those are kinds of things that could be reflective of a cultural fit. As I'm sure you guys all know, especially older adults tend to have more specific nutritional needs. So you need either low sodium or low sugar, and maybe the foods offered don't fit those requirements. Or it's just hard to get there. A lot of people depend on the bus, and maybe the bus drops you too many blocks away for it to make sense or be feasible for you to go. And that's one of the reasons that we were working with Rachel to set up that AFAC delivery. We looked at where free grocery and meal programs are located and which ones are open after 5 or on the weekends. For those folks that are working, maybe they're working traditional 9 to 5 hours, so they can't go to get groceries at 10 a.m. on a Wednesday. So there only about 20% of the locations were open on a weekend or in the evening. Though since we did this analysis, AFAC has reopened both of their evening distributions. So that has changed a little bit since then. So for children and older adults, there are 12 sites in Arlington that serve older adults specifically. So those are the Social 60 Plus cafes and the AFAC distributions that are located in the housing sites. And most of the people that, you know, live in those housing sites find those accessible, but those are transportation and access is still a barrier. You know, if you go to an AFAC distribution, you usually have to wait in a line and carry your groceries, which might not be as accessible as shopping at a grocery store. And then there were a lot of sites that serve children as well, but in the interviews, we were doing these interviews right around the end of the year. And so a lot of people brought up the fact that they were cutting back so they had money to provide holiday gifts for their children or new clothing. So, you know, maybe they didn't eat meat for a couple of weeks, so they had that extra money that they could put towards Christmas presents for their kids. They also looked at transportation timing. So they looked at census tracts and they have information from the American Community Survey about how many people there own a car and how many people there are of different ethnicities. So they used that information and mapped to the food pantry locations, and then looked at ethnic breakdowns to see, there are a lot of Asian residents that live in this neighborhood, and that's farther from a food distribution location. So it seemed that the food distribution locations tended to be closer to where a lot of the Hispanic residents lived, and a little bit farther from where some of the Asian residents lived. All right. That is, those are all of the slides that I have, but I want to mention one more thing, but I'm going to turn off my slides. Stop sharing, there we go. So we took all of this information from the Urban Institute and took it and combined it with the information that the task force was learning as a whole. And we're combining it all together to come up with that strategic plan to improve food insecurity. So the Urban Institute gave us some recommendations. We came up with some of our own. We're mixing them together. And we're hoping to release that in the fall. And it's divided into a few different categories about food access and collaboration and communication. So some of the things we're looking at are a coordinated outreach campaign around SNAP or food stamps, especially focused on older adults, because there's a new offering that simplifies the application and lengthens the qualification period. So doing some communication tools around that, changing some of the communication tools that DHS uses to be able to get to different populations that maybe aren't, getting the information that needs to be where it needs to be, and thinking kind of outside the box about food distributions. So I'm going to stop there and open it up to questions. I do want to mention one more thing that Anita brought up at the beginning. The Washington Post published an article just the other day about food insecurity, and that is based on a report that the Capital Area Food Bank just put out. So the Capital Area Food Bank serves the whole DC region. So 2 counties in Maryland, DC, and several counties in Virginia. And they did a survey of 4,000 residents from that whole area to better understand experiences with food and, meeting economic needs throughout the pandemic. So those results just came out. So I will drop the link to that article in the chat if you're interested. So anybody have any questions or thoughts?
Do you know approximately how many clients there are for Meals on Wheels?
Yes, about 170. Rachel, is that accurate?
Yes. So through the traditional kind of Meals on Wheels of Arlington, we have about 170 on the bulk delivery who receive it each week. But in total, for our Meals on Wheels program, we have about 300 that we're serving, and that's through the expansion of actually our meal pilot. I can share a little bit about that. And then some of the direct deliveries that we as a county have been offering. But some of the things, and Stephanie, thank you so much for that overview. A few of the things that we've been doing specifically for older adults, both as a result of some of the recommendations, but also the lessons we've learned throughout the pandemic, is that with our pop-up farmers market is one example. So during the pandemic, we had a lot of our individuals who love the farmers market. Transportation was a barrier. Safety of just leaving their home was not something many were comfortable with. And transportation for us had been a barrier in staffing, finding drivers. So we took the farmers markets to those communities in particular, and had a great success. It's something that we will repeat this year, of visiting 4 of our 5 independent living residences. We also, as the comment mentioned earlier, choice is something that's important. And so we partnered with a local business and restaurant on Columbia Pike. Hopefully you all have been to La Cocina, but they have prepared more of a sort of Latin American, Mexican inspired menu that we piloted with residents at Hunters Park, one of our independent living residences. And so that's another way we've been able to expand our sort of traditional Meals on Wheels or home delivered meals option.
Next question is, are the meal programs at the community centers open to everyone, or do people have to qualify for them?
They are open to anyone. You just have to be 60 plus.
Okay, and what about Meals on Wheels?
So for Meals on Wheels, there is sort of a registration process. Under the current emergency declaration, there is not a requirement to be homebound to qualify for the service. That will be lifted in August, though. And so to qualify for Meals on Wheels, it's usually 60 and above, but we do serve individuals who are under 60 with a permanent disability. Homebound is defined as difficulty leaving the home or needing someone to accompany you when you leave the home for like medical appointments. So someone that just says, I don't want to cook, they would not qualify. This is a service for someone who is usually older, may have a disability and in need of assistance with preparing meals, grocery shopping, and is homebound as a result.
Okay, let's see. Looks like Stephanie's been
I'm trying to
chat, so
cover the chat.
Yeah, but there was the comment about the locations of the food distribution centers with extended hours. And I just wanted to call people's attention to that you said you're looking at expanding that and adding an evening distribution at Arlington Mill.
Yeah, so one of the, that's one of the pieces we're looking at. So currently AFAC has 2 evening locations, but they're both at their headquarters on Nelson Street down by Shirlington. They have a Saturday location in Clarendon, and Capital Area Food Bank has a couple of monthly distributions that are, so once a month on Saturdays, and one that's in the late afternoon. I don't think it qualified as evening hours, but we're looking to add another evening AFAC location farther up in the county, so it would be a little more accessible. And you know, we're looking at what's available. You know, there are money restrictions to adding new distributions and adding different staff, because you know, most of when they only have a few evening weekend distributions, their staff aren't, you know, shifted to those evening hours, so that they're looking at what it would take to add staffing so that they can cover that. But they're definitely open to that. Yes, Wendy.
Hey, Stephanie. You know, it's been great both to work with you at AFAC and now watch the transition into the county. You know, I can't imagine anyone better for this job.
Thank you.
Right now. So it's really, you know, kudos to Rachel and you and everybody for bringing this about. I'm thrilled to hear that the SNAP application is going to, you know, we're going to be going to the simplified SNAP. Makes such a huge difference to get people to sign up and this idea of recertification when they're old and their income's not changing,
Right.
why mess with it? So that's just really good to hear. I think we're going to follow up with you afterwards, just to share with you what our experience has been these past 2.5 years of doing the pickups for older adults at Nelson Street and some of the satellite locations, because I know we'd love to think about ways that we might still simplify it. I mean, we've got some people who have been doing this weekly for clients, and truly for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And I know they love doing it. They love being able to help people. But one of the challenges is, standing in line at the distribution sites. It adds an hour or more to what could also be a 2 or 3 hour effort just to get there, get the food, et cetera. So great things to talk about and see if we can look for some solutions. I think the other thing that is just independent of AFAC that we've also found with our members who we help shop these last 2.5 years, people are really picky about where they shop and when they shop and what they shop for.
Yep.
And I'm sure you're hearing this from all of your clients. I mean, people are very coupon focused. They're very discount focused.
Yep.
To the point of making multiple trips in a week to different supermarkets to get the Thursday Harris Teeter discount for older adults. And this is on sale at Safeway. They end up spending more time, energy, and human resources to save some money, which is important to them. So I don't mean to joke about it in that way, but I do think it speaks a little bit to maybe we can think about if there are any partnerships that we can create with some of our local supermarkets to make some of that discount shopping a little bit easier for older adults. That may be completely out of the ballpark and they don't want to think about it, but it would be fun to have that conversation.
Yeah, we're definitely looking at some sort of retail components because, like you said, people want to make their own choices. They want to, at the end of the day, people would rather be able to buy their food than to receive free food. Pretty much everybody. Some free food here and there is great. I was a college student. I'm always up for some free pizza or whatever, but at the end of the day, people want to make their choices. And so, free food pantries are not the only solution to food insecurity. It's coming up with other ways, like Rachel was talking about this farmers market pop-up that we were doing. Right. So we're partnering with Fresh Farm, which is the organization that runs a lot of the farmers markets, and bringing some of that food to Culpeper Gardens and some of the other lower income senior housing sites so that people can shop for their fresh produce without having to travel to the farmers market, being able to use those farmers market program coupons to buy their food. So we're trying to kind of incorporate both food pantries, retail food, but also collaboration, communication, all of those kind of background pieces as well.
Right.
And that's a great point. That was a lesson we learned in 2020. It was our first year with Fresh Farm. And as an option, we actually did like pre-packaged produce that was delivered. And the feedback we heard was, I don't like bok choy. I don't like pears. I don't know what to do with plums. And so in 2021, Helen King really spearheaded the option of bringing the market to the communities. And if anyone wants to join us, we did open those up and would love to have anyone join us for those. But we had many of our Commission on Aging members who were part of the markets, but choice was really one of the options that we were able to offer. And it also offered a social component of neighbors getting to be able to meet neighbors. But it really speaks to providing the option to give people choice. And that makes all the difference.
Right. And choice matters too, because people don't like to see waste. I mean, exactly. Again, the feedback we heard from clients was if we brought them something that was prepackaged from AFAC that didn't reflect their interest, they just felt they were wasting food, and they really got, upset about that, knowing how precious it was to them.
Right.
Question here. You showed a chart of how long people need to commute to get groceries. Are there any food deserts in Arlington?
So food deserts are calculated by looking at low-income neighborhoods and distance to the grocery store. So like there are a lot of areas in North Arlington that are far from a grocery store because the houses are spaced out, but those don't count as food deserts because they're higher income areas. Most people have a car. The areas that might be closer to food deserts are more the areas that don't have an affordable grocery store. So in Crystal City, your only options for a full grocery store are in Pentagon City or in Potomac Yard. So in Pentagon City, there's a Whole Foods, there's a Costco, and there's a Harris Teeter. But all of those are a distance and they're all higher in either expensive stores. So for that's one of the reasons I think that Crystal City, Pentagon City is showing up in that higher food insecurity because they don't really have good access to grocery.
Okay, we're about 10 minutes to 11, just so you know. And we have a comment here. I like the task force's use of security versus insecurity in the title, as that comes from a place of hope rather than, depression. So
we like to focus on positive wording. But also that was the job title I was hired into. So props to Rachel and the other folks that that made my job position worded in that way.
It's Arlington. We always aim high. And I guess, one of the things in terms of next steps is that we are, as a task force, looking at hosting some listening sessions in the upcoming months. And so if there are any community groups that you would like us to focus on, we are hosting one at Claridge House, which is right across from Amazon's HQ2 site that they're building. But it's one of our largest and most diverse independent living residences for older adults. So if there are any suggestions or feedback, or if you'd like to be part of any of those listening sessions, please do let us know, and we'll be sure to share some of the information with you.
okay, we have another question. Do you know of any best practices from other communities that you would like to try here?
Yeah, so in my role, I've been able to connect with lots of other folks that have similar jobs to mine. A lot of them are kind of called food policy people. And also I've been able to go to a couple of conferences that where you hear presentations from other folks. There's a community in Boston, or in the Boston area, that did a big SNAP outreach campaign where they promoted SNAP or food stamps in a very positive way. So not of, do you need help? More along the lines of, food's expensive, SNAP can help. And wording things that way with very colorful ads on buses and in grocery stores. And that's one of the things that I found really interesting that I'm hoping that we can bring here. But there are a lot of ideas from other communities that I'm adding to the toolbox.
Another question, did you look at what the various faith communities are doing to alleviate food insecurity in Arlington?
Yeah, absolutely. So the representative from Our Lady Queen of Peace is on the task force, and I've been working pretty closely with Salvation Army. I just became aware of a Vietnamese church that's been distributing food, so I'm doing the best that I can to find all the groups that are distributing food and making sure they're part of this network. But if you know of little ones that might not be on my radar, I would love to hear from you.
And then I just, to add, I think in terms of best practices, we do, thanks to US Aging, formerly N4A, have connected with agencies on aging or AAAs around the US, looking at this issue. And Helen's been in touch with a few from California and Minnesota about some of the ways they've partnered with local businesses in expanding options. There are a few who offer sort of friendly cafes. So opportunities where they block some time for a designated population. Often they're more kind of local ethnic meal communities or restaurants. So we're certainly looking at that. And then in terms of some of the faith communities, St. Charles has been a great partner with us, and Meals on Wheels of Arlington, in if there is any, if there are any meals left over, St. Charles has helped us with some of the distribution to the local communities. And then I'm sure Anita or Gary, we could share the slides with you and certainly our contact information. And then we did put in the link the Food Security Task Force information that has a list of the members, our meeting minutes, and we'll definitely post our strategic plan there once it's complete.
Okay, and I see Stephanie has given us her email. So do our community gardens work with you to provide fresh food? And also, do you track gleaner programs?
That's mostly run through a program called Plot Against Hunger, which is under the Friends of Urban Agriculture, and they are on the task force as well. So yeah, and there's an item that we're thinking about including in the strategic plan that's focused on, spreading that education about gardening and maybe working with some apartment complexes to add gardening infrastructure to their offerings. So yes, that's definitely part of things. And medium rare, they definitely were. I'm not sure they still are. There was a ramen store as well. I need to follow up with them to make sure that they're still offering meals. There were a lot of things that were offered in 2020 and early 2021 that I'm not sure are still active.
Well, that's a good place for us to sort of pull it together. Anybody have any last comments? Otherwise, to me, this is so important to have a clearinghouse for this kind of information, for programs, for ideas, for what other people are doing that seem to work, ways that people can actually make one phone call and reach you, Stephanie or Rachel, and say, I know of this person that might need some help or whatever it is. So that is really a big step forward for Arlington. And I think that this has been so informative to let us know the scope of our challenge and the fact that times are looking like they're going to be challenging for the coming years. And there are so many dimensions to wanting to help people in the right way, with the right things at the right time, with the right message. And thankfully, Arlington Neighborhood Village has such great partnerships with our county. We look forward to, in the future, continuing to brainstorm. Stephanie's number is right there, 571-568-0880. And
yeah, there are two numbers for the county. 1300 is the general number, 1700 is for older adults. So for this population, yes, thank you for correcting, 703-228-1700.
That's right. That's I give that number. Rachel's put that in my brain 8 years ago when it became the one-stop shopping for just about anything that anybody wants at our age to reach the county about, you can dial 703-228-1700. And, you know, that's working so well for us. Well, thanks again, everybody. This has been wonderful, and I'm, you know, very grateful, and I will certainly look forward to seeing the future. We're getting responses from our attendees today. So thanks for taking time. Stephanie's just back from vacation. We're glad you took time with us today to do this.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Have fun with your board games.
Thank you. Very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.